When my only daughter told me I wasn't welcome at her wedding, I thought my heart had stopped beating. I can still hear her voice in my ear, calm and cold, like she was reading from a script. Mom, I don't think it's a good idea for you to come. It's better if you don't meet him yet. First I laughed. I thought it was some kind of cruel joke. A mother not allowed to see her daughter's fiancé? A mother not invited to the wedding? Surely she was teasing me. But her silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. I asked her, drama? What drama could I possibly cause at my own daughter's wedding? She sighed, as if I was some burden weighing down her happiness. I just don't want things to be awkward. You wouldn't understand, Mom. Please don't make this harder. That sentence cut me deeper than any knife. I had spent 25 years raising her alone after her father left. I worked 2 jobs, sacrificed my own health, my own dreams, just to give her every opportunity one never had. I sewed her prom dress with my own hands. I sold my grandmother's necklace to pay for her college textbooks. I worked weekends so she could study abroad. And now I was awkward. The humiliation burned in my chest. I felt like I'd been erased. I tried to tell myself maybe it was nerves, maybe she was overwhelmed with the wedding plans, maybe her fiancé was shy. But in my gut I knew better. There was something wrong. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every word she had said. Why didn't she want me there? Why didn't she want me to meet him? I walked circles in my small living room, staring at the old photographs on the walls, her smiling in her kindergarten graduation cap, her first bicycle, her diploma. I was in every picture. Every milestone of her life I was there. And now, at the most important day of all, she wanted me gone. The next day I went to see her. She opened the door with a smile that faded as soon as she saw me standing there. Mom, I told you. I just want to meet him, I said softly. 1 cup of coffee. Just 10 minutes. Is that too much for a mother to ask? Her eyes flickered with something, fear, maybe guilt. But she shook her head. Not now. He's busy. Busy? Too busy to meet the woman who raised his bride-to-be? I forced myself to smile, though my stomach twisted. All right. Another time then. But deep down I knew there wouldn't be another time. As I walked away from her doorstep, humiliation crashed over me in waves. Neighbors had seen me come and go. They'd whisper. Why wasn't she invited? What did she do wrong? That night I overheard something that made my blood run cold. I was in the grocery store when 2 women I vaguely knew from church were talking by the canned goods aisle. They didn't see me. One of them whispered, "Did you hear? She's not even invited. Her own daughter doesn't want her there. Says she'll embarrass her." Embarrass her. I had given everything to that girl, and now I was nothing more than an embarrassment. I didn't buy a thing. I just walked out, tears blurring my vision, my chest heavy as stone. Back at home I sat in the dark, clutching a photo of my daughter as a little girl, her face sticky with ice cream, smiling like the world was hers. How had we gone from that to this? But even through my tears, one thought burned brighter than the rest. She wasn't shutting me out because of who I was. No, this was about him. She didn't just want me gone. She wanted me silenced. And that was the moment I knew. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding like a drum that wouldn't stop. My daughter's words played over and over in my head. It's better if you don't come. I kept asking myself why? Why was I suddenly the villain in her story? The next morning I decided to test the waters. I went to visit my sister, hoping maybe she knew something. She looked at me with pity before I even said a word. That told me everything. You heard, didn't you? I asked. She hesitated. People are talking. I don't know what's true and what isn't. But they say your daughter doesn't want you at the wedding because you'll make things uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. My voice cracked. What does that even mean? Her silence said more than any explanation. She didn't want to be the one to hurt me further. By afternoon, the whispers had reached my ears from every corner. Neighbors avoided my eyes. One woman at the bakery muttered under her breath, "Imagine raising a child only for her to throw you away." I wanted to scream, but the shame pinned me down. At home I poured myself some tea, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the cup. My mind flashed back to all those years when I'd work double shifts, then walk home in the rain because I couldn't afford gas. I had done it for her. Every sacrifice, every humiliation, every tear. And now she was repaying me by erasing me. But the thing is, daughters don't just cut mothers off without a reason. Not when we were once as close as she and I had been. No, someone had whispered poison into her ear. And I had a sinking feeling it was the man she planned to marry. That thought ate at me like acid. Why was he so desperate to keep me away? What was he hiding? Later that week, I finally gathered enough courage to call her again. My voice was calm, but my chest felt like it was on fire. Sweetheart, I don't understand. Why don't you want me to meet him? What have I done to deserve this? Her reply was flat, rehearsed. Mom, please don't start. I'm happy. Isn't that enough? I don't want to argue with you. Argue? I just want to know the man you're about to spend the rest of your life with. That's not arguing. That's being a mother. There was silence. Then she muttered, You wouldn't understand him. He's different. It's better this way. Different. That word stuck with me. Different how? I wanted to push, but I knew if I pressed too hard, I'd drive her away completely. So I let her go, my heart heavier than before. That night my aunt, the only one who still spoke to me honestly, came to visit. She sat on my old couch, her hands twisting in her lap. Listen, she whispered, glancing around like the walls had ears. Maybe it's better if you don't go. Not because you're unwelcome, but because it's dangerous. They don't want you knowing too much. Dangerous. I echoed. What are you talking about? She shook her head. I don't know details, but I've seen the way he talks to her. Controlling. Sharp. Like she's scared of him even when she smiles. My stomach dropped. I had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed made my blood run cold. After she left, I sat alone in the dim light of the kitchen, staring at the steam curling up from my untouched tea. I knew then that this wasn't about me embarrassing my daughter. It wasn't about me being awkward. It was about something far darker. My daughter wasn't just hiding me from her wedding. She was hiding me from him. And that meant one thing. If I wanted to know the truth, I'd have to find it myself. I closed my eyes, gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles went white. If she wouldn't show me who he was, I would uncover it on my own. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. If my daughter wouldn't tell me the truth about her fiancé, I would have to find it myself. I started small. One evening when the loneliness pressed too hard, I sat at my old computer and typed his name into the search bar. Nothing much came up, no family photos, no childhood friends, no old classmates wishing him happy birthday online. Just a perfectly polished LinkedIn page with vague job titles like consultant and entrepreneur. That was my first red flag. Real people leave footprints. Real people have messy trails, embarrassing photos, old school posts, family snapshots. But he looked like a ghost wearing a mask. I leaned closer to the screen, scrolling until my eyes burned. The more I searched, the more the pit in my stomach grew. A man that clean, that polished wasn't clean at all. The next day, I called an old neighbor who worked at the town hall. I tried to sound casual. Do you happen to know if a man named Daniel Cross has property records here? I asked, my voice steady though my heart raced. She clicked around, then hesitated. Funny thing, he rented a place a year ago. Paid in cash. No forwarding address before that. Doesn't own a thing in his name. Cash. No past. No roots. Another red flag. I hung up the phone, pressing my palm to my forehead. Who exactly was this man my daughter was about to marry? That night, guilt gnawed at me. I paced my living room, whispering to myself. Am I betraying her trust? Or am I protecting her? Every answer led to the same place. If I stayed silent, I could lose her forever to him. I couldn't take that risk. So I dug deeper. I started asking quiet questions, mentioning his name in passing to people who worked around town. Most shrugged, but one older shopkeeper leaned in and lowered her voice. You didn't hear this from me, but he comes in here sometimes. Always looking over his shoulder. Like he's hiding from something. Or someone. My skin prickled. The following week, I got my biggest clue. I stopped by the local cafe where my daughter liked to work on her laptop. I asked the barista, a bright young woman who had served them both a few times, if she knew anything. She glanced around before whispering. He gives me the creeps. Always on his phone. Never lets her order for herself. Once, I overheard him telling her to delete her messages because nobody needs to see what we talk about. Delete her messages. Control. Secrets. My heart twisted with fear. I walked home in a fog, each step heavier than the last. The puzzle pieces were starting to form an ugly picture, one I didn't want to see but couldn't ignore. That night my phone buzzed. It was a text from my daughter. "Mom, please stop asking questions. You're making things worse. Just let me be happy." Tears blurred my vision as I read the words. She didn't even sound like herself anymore. It was as if he'd reached through the phone and written the message for her. I wanted to call her, to beg her to open her eyes. But I knew she wouldn't hear me, not yet. Not until I had proof she couldn't deny. As I set my phone down, I caught sight of something in my old box of papers. A name. A memory. Years ago, after my husband left, there had been a man. Smooth-talking, charming, promising quick money. He had nearly scammed me out of what little savings I had. I'd reported him, and he vanished. And now, as I stared at the faint signature on an old document, my blood turned to ice. The last name. The handwriting. It wasn't identical, but close enough to rattle me. Could it be? Could the man standing next to my daughter at the altar be tied to the very person who once tried to destroy me? My heart pounded so loudly I could barely breathe. I didn't have the full picture yet. But I knew one thing for certain. The man she was about to marry wasn't who he claimed to be. And I was going to prove it. The old document trembled in my hands. The signature wasn't identical, but close enough to stir a memory I had buried deep. Years ago, when my husband left, I had been desperate, vulnerable. That's when a man had come around, promising quick investments, fast returns. His name wasn't Daniel back then, but his handwriting, his way of writing the C in his last name, it was almost the same. I remembered the smooth voice, the charming smile, the way he had made me feel foolish when I questioned him. I had nearly lost everything before I caught on to his scam. And when I threatened to expose him, he vanished like smoke. Could Daniel Cross really be the same man with a new name, new story, new prey? The thought sent shivers down my spine. I knew I couldn't jump to conclusions, but I also knew I couldn't ignore it. So I went back to my computer and started searching again. This time I didn't just look for Daniel Cross. I searched for scams, fraud cases, aliases. Piece by piece, an ugly picture emerged. Men with similar descriptions, moving from town to town, charming women, draining them dry, then disappearing. Sometimes he was Daniel. Sometimes David. Sometimes Darren. Always with a different last name. Always leaving a trail of broken hearts and empty bank accounts. My chest tightened. If I was right, my daughter wasn't marrying a man. She was marrying a predator. I couldn't sit still. I grabbed my coat and went to my sister's house. She frowned when she opened the door. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. "I think I have," I whispered. I showed her the document, the signature, the articles I'd pulled up. "It's him. I'm sure of it." She read silently, her lips pressed tight. Finally, she said, "If this is true, your daughter's in serious danger." "I know." My voice cracked. "But she won't listen to me. She already thinks I'm the problem." My sister's eyes softened. "Then you need proof. Hard proof. Something undeniable." I nodded, though fear gripped me tighter with every breath. Proof meant digging deeper into a man who clearly didn't want to be found out. Proof meant putting myself in his path. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside made me jump. I kept picturing him finding out I was snooping. What if he turned his anger on me? Worse, what if he turned it on my daughter? By morning I knew I couldn't do this alone. I reached out to my aunt again. She had always been braver than me, more willing to confront ugly truths. Over coffee, I told her everything I had found. Her face paled. "This is bigger than gossip," she said firmly. "If he's a con man, you need to get the law involved. At least talk to someone who can check his records." The idea both relieved and terrified me. I wasn't used to calling in authorities. But she was right. This wasn't just a family argument anymore. This was about safety. Before I could decide, my phone buzzed. A message from my daughter, "Mom, please stop digging. You're ruining everything." My hands shook as I read it. The timing was too perfect. How did she know I was digging? Did he know? Was he reading her messages, controlling what she sent? The walls felt like they were closing in on me. I typed back, "Sweetheart, I just want to protect you." Her reply came instantly. "If you love me, stay out of this." The words stabbed me right through the heart. I set the phone down, staring at the cold glow of the screen. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. She thought I was the enemy. She thought love meant silence. But I knew better. Love meant protecting her, even if she hated me for it. That night, I sat in the dark with the document in one hand and my daughter's text in the other. I knew what had to be done. If the past was repeating itself, I would stop it, no matter the cost. The golden invitation had arrived weeks earlier, shimmering with embossed letters and a scent of expensive perfume. My daughter's wedding, the day every mother dreams of, should have been a celebration of love and family. But the words carved into the heavy paper cut me deeper than any knife. "We kindly request your absence." I read it over and over, my hands trembling. How could my own daughter, whom I had raised with sleepless nights and endless sacrifices, shut me out of her most important day? The morning of the wedding arrived, and while the city buzzed with excitement, my small house was cloaked in silence. From my window, I could see luxury cars streaming toward the grand cathedral on the hill, carrying relatives, friends, and people who had only just entered her life, people she had chosen over me. I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at a cold cup of tea. The world outside sparkled with joy, but my heart was heavy with grief. I tried to busy my hands with chores, but every sound, the clink of dishes, the ticking of the clock, reminded me of where I was not. Meanwhile, the ceremony unfolded without me. My daughter, dressed in ivory silk and diamonds, glowed under the soft light of the cathedral chandeliers. Her smile was radiant for the cameras, her laughter rehearsed for the crowd. Yet beneath the veil of celebration, a shadow lingered. I wasn't there, not in the front row, not in the photographs, not even mentioned in the speeches. I later heard from a distant cousin that when someone had asked about me, my daughter's new circle of friends had laughed it off. They said I was too simple, too out of place in such a refined affair. As though my years of sacrifice, of working double shifts to fund her education, meant nothing. At home, I opened the old photo album I kept hidden in a drawer. Page after page showed her growing up. Her first steps in a second-hand dress, her gap-toothed smile at school recitals, the two of us standing proudly outside the tiny apartment we once called home. I had given everything for her happiness. And now in return I was cast aside like a stranger. The cruelest part wasn't the banishment itself, it was the silence. No phone call, no explanation, not even a note slipped under my door. Just the cold exclusion of a daughter who had let wealth and pride erase the very hands that raised her. As the night deepened, the sounds of fireworks from the reception echoed through the city. I imagined the chandeliers glittering, champagne glasses clinking, music swelling as the couple danced their first dance. And me, her mother, banished to the shadows, as though my presence would taint the perfection of her new life. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that weddings end. Parties fade. The glitter always washes away. And when the lights dimmed, when the guests went home, and when the people she had chosen over me revealed their true faces, she would remember the mother she had discarded. I sat by the window that night, watching the last spark of fireworks fade into the dark sky. My tears had dried, replaced not by anger, but by a quiet resolve. If she wanted me absent from her perfect life, so be it. I would not beg, nor would I bow. But I would not disappear either. For the day would come when she realized that love cannot be bought, and loyalty cannot be rented. And when that day arrived, she would find me, not at her grand mansion, not among her glittering circle of admirers, but in the humble home of the mother who had always, always loved her. The morning after the wedding, I awoke with swollen eyes and an ache in my chest that no amount of rest could cure. The sun streamed through my curtains, indifferent to my pain, and I sat there in the quiet, wondering if I had truly lost my daughter forever. But life has a way of peeling back illusions sooner than we expect. And that very same day, whispers began to reach me. Started with a phone call. My cousin Maria, who had attended the wedding, spoke in a hushed, urgent voice. "You won't believe what I saw last night," she said. I braced myself, unsure if I wanted to hear it. She told me about how my daughter's fiancé, now her husband, had slipped away during the reception, disappearing with one of the bridesmaids for far too long. About the tense arguments behind closed doors that some guests overheard. About the way my daughter had smiled for the cameras but looked shattered when she thought no one was watching. My heart twisted. Was this the man she had chosen over me? The one so important that I wasn't allowed to embarrass her at the altar? Maria continued, her voice dropping even lower. And his family, they kept talking about money. About how your daughter's inheritance would keep their business afloat. It didn't sound like love, it sounded like a transaction. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear, bile rising in my throat. They hadn't just taken my daughter away from me, they had used her. The day went on, and more fragments of the truth reached me through the grapevine. Guests leaving the cathedral had noticed the bride's tears, quickly hidden by makeup artists and photographers. Others whispered about the groom's arrogance, how he spoke down to staff and barked orders at his new wife as though she were already a servant in his home. Every word was like a stone added to the weight in my chest. And yet, beneath the grief, another feeling began to stir: vindication. My absence from that grand spectacle wasn't just an insult, it was proof of something deeper. They hadn't wanted me there because they knew I would see through the charade. That night, while the new couple toasted with champagne in their glittering ballroom, I sat alone with a candle burning on my table. I closed my eyes and whispered a promise to myself. I may not have been there yesterday, but the truth will come out. And when it does, she will remember who I am. The reckoning had begun, though none of them realized it yet. The seeds of betrayal were already sprouting in the cracks of their perfect facade. My daughter might have silenced me for a day, but fate has a way of restoring voices that should never have been muted. And so I waited, not in anger but in quiet strength. Because sometimes justice doesn't come with shouts or vengeance. Sometimes it arrives like a whisper at a wedding, a rumor over the phone, a look caught in the corner of a room. It was only a matter of time before my daughter discovered the truth for herself. And when that moment came, she would need me. Not the diamonds, not the chandeliers, not the hollow promises of her new family. She would need me. And this time I would not turn her away. The days after the wedding should have been filled with joy and tender beginnings, but instead they were poisoned by shadows. My daughter's new life began to show its cracks faster than anyone had expected. At first, she tried to mask it with smiles and photos and glowing posts on social media. But those who looked closely, the ones who truly knew her, could see something hollow behind her eyes. I, as her mother, didn't need photos to tell me. I felt it in my bones. It wasn't long before the first call came. My daughter's voice was strained, brittle, like glass about to shatter. "Mom, can we talk?" The sound of that word, Mom, after weeks of silence, nearly brought me to tears. But I steadied myself and listened. She spoke in fragments, her pride warring with her fear. The groom she had defended so fiercely, the man for whom she had cast me aside, was not the man she thought she married. His temper was quick, his arrogance unbearable. He spoke of her not as his partner, but as a trophy that proved his worth. And then came the confession that cut through me like lightning. I found messages on his phone with her. The bridesmaid. The lie, the betrayal was exposed at last. The whispers Maria had warned me about were no longer whispers, they were truth carved into her heart. I closed my eyes, listening to my daughter cry on the other end of the line, remembering how she once wept as a little girl after scraping her knee, how I used to hold her and say, "It's going to be all right, I've got you." But now she hadn't wanted me at her wedding. She hadn't wanted my embrace on the day she needed me most. And still, even as bitterness tried to claw at me, my instinct was to protect her. The lies didn't stop at infidelity. Over the following weeks, more truth surfaced. The groom's family had been drowning in debt, and the wedding wasn't a union of love but a transaction, a lifeline. Her inheritance, her savings, even the jewelry she wore, every bit of it had been calculated, weighed, and exploited. She began to see it with her own eyes. The hushed arguments over money, the phone calls he would silence when she entered the room, the business documents she wasn't allowed to touch. The perfect image she had traded me for was rotting from the inside. The hardest part for her was facing her own guilt. "You warned me, Mom," she whispered once through tears. "And I didn't listen. I shut you out." I wanted to tell her it was all right, that we all make mistakes, but the truth stuck in my throat. The pain of being excluded, humiliated, erased from her most sacred day. It wasn't something I could just wash away. So instead I said, "The lies have been exposed now. What matters is what you do with the truth. By then, my daughter's facade had completely crumbled. The people who had seemed so glamorous at her wedding now showed their true colors: distant, selfish, uninterested in her pain. And every night, when she sat in her gilded cage of a house, she thought of the mother she had cast aside. The reckoning had come, not with fireworks or revenge, but with silence and truth. Lies have short legs, as they say. They can't run far before stumbling. And when they fell, they dragged my daughter's illusions down with them. Yet even as her world unraveled, I remained steady, watching, waiting, because this wasn't the end of her suffering. The worst was still to come, and she would need me more than ever. For once lies are exposed, betrayal doesn't just sting. It demands a price. The days following the exposed lies were nothing short of chaos for my daughter. Her perfect fairy tale collapsed faster than the petals of a wilting rose. The whispers that had once been confined to wedding gossip now roared through her social circles. Friends who had toasted champagne at her reception began to vanish, unwilling to be associated with scandal. The bridesmaid's betrayal was no longer a secret. It was a stain, spreading across every conversation, every glance. At home, the gilded cage she had once paraded as her dream house turned cold and suffocating. She told me later how she would wander from room to room in silence, unable to escape the sound of her own thoughts. The laughter of her wedding day echoed like a cruel taunt. The man she had defended, the one she had chosen over her own mother, revealed his true self completely. His words turned sharp, his temper violent, not with fists but with ridicule, with cruelty designed to make her small. He blamed her for his failures, accused her of being ungrateful, while secretly siphoning away what was left of her money. She was no longer a bride. She was prey. The awakening began not with a dramatic confrontation, but with a quiet moment of despair. She told me she stood in front of the mirror one night, still wearing the wedding band that now felt like a shackle, and asked herself a question she had never dared to voice before. What have I done? It was then that the illusions cracked fully. The chandeliers, the gowns, the promises. None of it mattered anymore. All she could see was the emptiness in her eyes, the hollow shell of a girl who had thought she didn't need her mother. And then the call came. Her voice trembled as she said my name. Mom, I can't do this anymore. There was no arrogance this time, no wall between us. Just desperation. The daughter who had once banished me from her wedding now reached for me like a drowning child clinging to a lifeline. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated. But what I felt was older, deeper. Something only a mother can carry. I felt her pain as if it were my own. When she arrived at my door, she looked nothing like the glowing bride from the glossy photographs. Her hair was disheveled, her face pale, her eyes swollen from tears. The weight of betrayal had stripped her down to the truth. She collapsed into my arms without a word, sobbing against my shoulder like she had when she was a child. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I allowed myself to hold her. Not as the woman who had humiliated me, but as the daughter I had never stopped loving. We sat together in silence, the air heavy with things unsaid. Eventually, she whispered, I should have listened. I should have never pushed you away. Her words cracked my heart wide open. But I didn't need her apologies. I needed her awakening. And in that moment I saw it. She had finally stripped away the lies, the pride, the glittering illusions. That night, as she slept in her childhood room, safe for the first time since her wedding, I sat in the living room and let the weight of it all sink in. The betrayal, the humiliation, the absence from her big day. It had all been leading here. The aftermath of her choices had nearly broken her. But in the ashes, something else began to bloom. Awakening. She had lost her illusions, but perhaps she had found something greater, the truth. And truth, though painful, is the beginning of freedom. I knew then that the battle wasn't over. The groom, his family, their greed, they would not let go easily. But at least, finally, my daughter had awakened to the reality I had seen all along. And now perhaps she was ready to fight. Morning light spilled into the house, soft and golden, as though the world itself was offering a fresh start. My daughter stirred awake in her old bedroom, the one filled with posters, worn books, and echoes of a simpler time. For the first time in months, perhaps years, she looked at peace. Over breakfast, she spoke quietly but firmly. Mom, I don't want to go back. Not to him. Not to that life. Her words carried a finality that made me exhale in relief. The girl who had once been blinded by glitter and pride had been replaced by a woman who understood the value of love, loyalty, and truth. The days that followed were filled with painful but necessary steps. Together we gathered evidence of the lies, the stolen money, the infidelity, the debts his family had tried to bury under the wedding spectacle. My daughter, though shaken, grew stronger each day. I watched her reclaim her voice, her dignity, her power. The confrontation was inevitable. When she finally met him face to face, she didn't go alone. I was beside her, silent but unyielding. The groom's mask slipped immediately. Rage, arrogance, mockery, but my daughter stood her ground. You thought you could buy me, use me. But I am not your property. His words faltered. His power shrank in the shadow of her courage. And for the first time I saw him for what he truly was. Not a prince, not a savior, but a coward exposed by truth. The legal process wasn't quick, but justice has a way of finding its mark. The prenup, once dismissed as unnecessary, became her shield. His family's debt swallowed them whole, while my daughter walked away free, scarred but not broken. Through it all I stood by her side. Not with "I told you so" or bitterness, but with the steady presence of a mother who had endured humiliation and pain, yet never stopped loving. And then slowly the healing began. We spent evenings cooking together, laughing over simple meals. She helped me in the garden, her manicured hands finally touching soil, grounding her in a way diamonds never could. We walked through the old neighborhood, where people greeted her with warmth she had forgotten existed. Love that had nothing to do with money or appearances. One evening, as we watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of fire and gold, she turned to me and whispered, "I almost lost everything, Mom. But I found you again. And that's all I need." My throat tightened. The wound of being banished from her wedding would never fully disappear. But this moment, the honesty in her eyes, was its own kind of healing. Life didn't return to what it once was. It became something new, something stronger. My daughter pursued her independence, building a career with her own hands instead of leaning on others. She spoke openly about her mistakes, warning others not to confuse glitter with gold. And me? I no longer carried the weight of silence. I no longer questioned my worth as a mother. I had been tested, humiliated, cast aside. But in the end, love and truth had endured. On her birthday months later, she gave me a small wrapped box. Inside was a silver locket with 2 pictures, one of her in her wedding gown, smiling through the cracks of her illusion, and one of us together now, arms entwined, radiant in a different kind of joy. "So I never forget," she said. "That I chose wrong once, but I'll never choose against you again." As the years stretched forward, we carried scars but also strength. We no longer lived in the shadows of betrayal. We had stepped into something brighter. A bond tested by fire and reborn in forgiveness. The wedding had been the end of one chapter. But this was the beginning of another. A new beginning.